Bonjour. Oh man, I'm tired. All right, so last night we proposed the idea of taking the Ghostbusters premise and reworking it to involve sort of superhero powers. I guess it would be more important to dub it psychic powers, not necessarily superhero, because I don't want it to be a world with people in capes and costumes. But this does sort of bring to mind an anime I used to be a fan of. I haven't seen it in years. I'd have to go back and review. So there was an anime called, and it was people who develop unusual powers and an organization that hunted them down. That one's much more serious. And that is a direction I could potentially take this. Too poop to do a lot. But so I had two potential approaches last night, and I think I could potentially do both depending on how we choose to go forward. The first one was definitely more comedic, and I think that one works better for a mainstream movie, book, or something like that, or a graphic novel even, where you start with the new age mom who believes in all these special powers and all those videos you see on the internet of people teleporting to save a kid in the way of a truck on the road or something like that, and has sort of made a newsletter or webcast or podcast about these phenomenon. A video podcast, I guess, would be more important. And I want to say her engineering assistant, like the neighborhood tinkerer, a redneck who's able to take apart a lawnmower and water cooler and turn it into a goop blaster. And so you have this redneck and this soccer mom character who are sort of fringe believers of the wacky world of paranormal human abilities. And they sort of find themselves put in the position of actually finding evidence of these things going on, and going on in a greater degree than they ever have before, and having to move from being a expert in the theoretical of this to being an expert into what to do when confronted with things going haywire and out of control. So the act of this that sort of hints at Witch Hunter Robin is the idea that they start out as these experts, and then they have to be consultants on how to resolve, like people call them when something's going on and they want to be able to help. And so you have, first you're going to have the mom character and the tinkerer, and they're going to rope in the audio video intern, who I guess is going to take the Venkman role, the face for the group, the marketing, the one that gets their name out there and does the outreach, the public face. And here's the thing. Ghostbusters has 4 characters, and I sometimes like to deviate from the standard number design. So 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became 3 Ravens, or what was it? What was the one we did the other day? The 5 Dryads. And so that's a quick way to differentiate yourself. So I'm feeling like I kind of want to do that, but what I'm thinking of is, instead of having the science nerd, the engineer nerd, and the public face, and then hire on the everyman, that Winston was very much the surrogate for the audience. So super weird things happen. It's just par for the course of what you'd expect if you're a supernatural investigator or an engineer who builds devices to deal with those consequences, or part of the pitch for a front man for an organization. But if something weird is going on, Winston needs it explained, and so he's the one that makes it so that we as the audience get the explanation. I feel like instead of doing that, I want to go a little bit of the Witch Hunter Robin course, where you're going to have the science nerd mom, the engineer tinkerer, the one that's probably going to have some questions and be the one everybody gives answers to, is probably going to be the intern. But I do think we could have 1 or 2 additional characters that would be cases. So instead of somebody you hire, or somebody part of the group, or somebody who's into this fringe thing, or in it for the how to be the front man for a group, you have somebody who's one of their first clients. Now, this isn't the role that Dana, and there is no Dana, there is only Zuul. That's not this. This is more along the lines of, you have somebody who's experiencing weird phenomenon, and it's a weird ability development, and it's sort of a hazard and a danger, and they're sort of saved by the group, and their group ends up kind of taking them in as a member. So you have this weird psychic powered person working for the group. And I'm thinking it's possible to do 1. You might be able to get away with 2. But if you're going to do 2, one of them might end up going bad. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that second one as an option. Now, it's worth asking at this point, is there going to be a Dana? Is there going to be a gatekeeper and a keymaster? And I feel like maybe that character can play that role twice. So in Ghostbusters, you have the client who gets them involved in the biggest case of the whole story arc. And this one, I feel like that background story. So if we're taking the idea of Ghostbusters, which is a story of supernatural investigators that live on the fringes of pseudoscience, when it starts to become obvious that their pseudoscience is real. So that's happening as the city becomes a powder keg of things going weird and crazy. And that's the prelude to the return of, what is it? Is it Gozer, the Gozerian? I think it is. So the return of Gozer, the evil god of something or other. That's sort of a key event up to that event is the sequence of events that take their fringe interest into the public realm. In this case, we're going to have that fringe element that gets brought into the public realm. But the question must be, what is the climactic event, the thing that it is all leading to? And I feel like the way I kind of want to go with this is that in the story, you're having more people have breakout events where they develop abilities, and these characters have to intervene to neutralize the breakout event and get these breakout event people into a guidance program or some protective custody so that they don't hurt themselves or others. And I feel like it's not going to go as public, but it's going to be very clear as you go that it's not, they're never trying to keep it quiet, but most people are going to still not believe it. But it's going to get harder and harder for the public not to believe something's going on. And then I think the precipitating event really ought to be something along the lines of somebody's creating these breakout events. So these people whose powers are suddenly emerging, it is not a natural occurrence in the numbers that we're seeing. And those breakout events would be either the consequence of exposure to an element. So like in the original X-Men movie, Magneto was building a device that broadcast a signal or blasted out a wave that as it passed over other human beings, it turned them into kind of mutants, but it was not stable enough to allow that to happen to human beings. So taking the idea of something like that, or it's also possible that you have a breakout event of a person who's breaking out as a superpowered individual, and their breaking out is instigating others breaking out, which I feel like is maybe a better way to go. I don't think we need the nefarious villainous character to be the trope that we're working on. I kind of like the idea of somebody whose ability is that they sort of emit a halo that when it comes in contact with other people can instigate powers to manifest. The question is it like a permanent manifestation? I think that's what I want to do. I want to have somebody who's, under normal circumstances, emits such a little amount of this ability to give others abilities. First of all, they don't necessarily manifest any actual abilities themselves, because their ability is to give other people abilities, which would be sort of like a terrible thing to develop, because everybody else is going to end up powerful, but you're not. So you have this person who has this low level ability, but it's not like you walk past somebody and they suddenly turn into the Incredible Hulk. It's going to be weird phenomenon happens to people they're around, but it only happens on a very small scale. Like, you walk past and the cup of coffee that somebody's drinking that's warm is suddenly cold because their hands drained all the heat from it. But it's like, what is this? What's wrong? Why is my coffee cold? And the character who caused that power to develop has moved on at that point. That person never manages to display that ability ever again. So that quirk of manifesting an ability is so small and so subtle that it's just weird circumstances happening all around this character as they move about. But every now and then, something triggers them more aggressively, that somebody within their environment goes off. And when that person goes off, they permanently manifest as somebody with abilities. And something must be a trigger for it. The question being, is it just a trigger that's circumstance of their environment? Or is this legitimately somebody's figured it out and is using them to, like, maybe there's a Magneto character, a character who has abilities and is tired of the hiding and wants to break this out from being a secret hidden fringe thing to a public event. And when you trigger that, it'll be the moment that they can step out from the shadows and just be part of the world again. And they're sort of watching and observing for the right instigator. And this kid who instigates others to break out is a prime target. It's their unintentional. The character with the ability to make other people have abilities is sort of like an unwitting weapon in the war for being publicly known. And so there's a way to set it. How do you set a kid like that off? Sonic and that might be the situation we need to look at. I think last night I talked about the idea that you could potentially have the characters armed with sonic weapons or magnetic beams that could change a person's mood. I think that's what we need to do. Somebody figures out a way to rev somebody's powers up. So they've figured out a way to take. That's what it is. You have a couple people who are low-level power users who figured out and are part of that sort of hidden underground powered people. But somebody's figured out that they can amp their powers up a little bit, not over long term without causing potentially damage, but they found a way to amp their power up. And taking that idea, somebody's noticed this kid who seems to be instigating events all around him. And nobody would know to notice it unless they also have abilities and have recognized the symptoms. So they start targeting the kid to amp him up at key points and trigger people around him to manifest. Okay. And so you have that kid who can cause others to develop may be the Dana from Ghostbusters. And you can have somebody who was permanently triggered join the team, and they're going to be something that lets us see that instigator that amps somebody's powers up. Okay. I'm seeing this. This is working. And you want to have it moderately comedic stakes for the story. Like, things have to get more serious. The characters have to get the chance to be heroes. And I think the culminating event at the end has to be that they save the city in such a way that the world has to be more aware of the fact that there may be people out there with abilities. Not to the degree that we're going to see necessarily, a second storyline years later where the whole world is full of spandex wearing cape heroes, but enough that you're going to have a sort of background awareness that some people have extraordinary gifts in the world. So that's really the more comedic one, and I think we can make that work. There is sort of a more nefarious. That one would be a little bit more like taking Men in Black as some inspiration for it. So you get, or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., something to that effect. And they're out there responding to unusual abilities, and they're there to solve the problem. But this isn't some as part of a few. Your connection is unstable. Please wait while we try to reconnect. I hate when it does that. So, coming from the idea of some crackpot mad scientists are noticing this trend going on, and they're seen as fringe believers in woo-woo mysticism. But in their specialty of conspiracy theorist approach to this problem, they sort of become a Men in Black type situation where they get down to the problem and resolve it, hunting down those who are cutting loose and going wild with developed powers, and sort of removing them from society in a way that prevents them from harming others, and believing that they're doing it for the good of the people involved, but introduce the moral quandary of the hunt and capture of human beings who never set out to be a threat. That one's a little more serious, but I think it's worth doing. That's very, very much like Witch Hunter Robin, except for it's not a government-funded organization. I think there was also a TV series on Sci-Fi that was based off of a graphic novel called Painkiller Jane or something like that. Similar premise. And as it stands for tonight, I think that's what I've got the energy for. And I think we've kind of given at least a skeletal outline of where we're going to go with the Ghostbuster idea here. I think tomorrow we'll figure out another one. We'll start a new one. Not sure which one we're going to do. We've still got Jurassic Park, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Buffy, Stargate, Terminator, Roger Rabbit, and Blade Runner. I think we'll figure out what it is tomorrow. I'll probably post it as the title of tomorrow's video. See where we go from there. Alrighty. Until then, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I will catch you tomorrow. And until then, take care and have a good night. I got to copy that because I've been doing some copy and pasting other stuff. Because my replacement computer arrived. But it arrived for me to discover that the adapter for the back of hooking up a monitor doesn't fit the monitor I got. So I got to find another adapter. We'll figure it out. We'll get there tomorrow, I think. Hopefully we'll figure it out. Till then, toodles and sleep well, I guess. I'm definitely need some sleep.